Anna, we're here at the Chilli Lawtech conference, and you've been talking about Clock. So firstly, can you tell us what Clock is?
Sure, hi, great to be with you. Clock is the Corporate Legal Operations Consortium, and it started out in the US about 4 years ago with a couple of in-house counsel who were quite passionate about legal operations and bringing sort of a more efficient approach to the way in-house legal teams ran. It's now pretty much a global phenomenon, and it's reached Australia, with Australia having its first Clock Institute last week, in fact.
Fantastic.
And I've been an active member of Clock since it came to Australia about 18 months ago.
Fantastic. I think the thing I've seen for it is, having done some work with in-house counsel, is these are small teams of people who are very, very busy, often with not that much resource support around them. And so my perception of Clock is that it creates, there's a very sharing kind of approach to information and frameworks to help the legal teams.
That's right.
Is that a fair?
So I think it's the first forum that's really had a dedicated focus on in-house teams. So it's not about the law firm ecosystem or the vendor tech ecosystem. This is about in-house teams. And yes, it really does provide a really good framework and platform for collaboration. And in fact, the Australian Clock community, that's where I think we get the most value from our informal collaboration. So we meet quarterly, and we share information on initiatives that we're working on together. We invite speakers into the room, so we can invite firms or vendors into the room. But at the end of the day, it's just the in-house community that is there.
Fantastic.
Sharing information. And then there's the more formal information available through Clock itself, where they do monthly surveys. And then they share that data, and we've also just done our own first Australian survey of the in-house.
It'd be good to find out more about that when it comes out.
Yeah, well, the results were launched last week at the Institute, and there were two key findings. The first is that we are lower than sort of the data that's coming out of the US in terms of our usage of alternative legal service providers. And the second thing is that there's an underinvestment across the Australian Clock community in tech and technology platforms. And I guess that's not surprising, because, you know, the infiltration of technology is really just taking hold in the firm, you know, in the law firm sphere. That's where, and they've had the money to invest in that, and I guess in-house teams haven't. But I think that's going to start to change.
Interesting. And how has your role changed? Because I think you've made a shift in the last within the last year.
That's right. So I went in-house 5 years ago. I'm a lawyer by training. I spent my career in private practice here and in the UK. I came in as the Senior Legal Counsel for Technology Procurement Outsourcing. And in February of this year was appointed to the role of Head of Operations for Legal and Governance.
Interesting.
So this came out of, I guess, a shift in the mindset of our General Counsel at the time, in terms of bringing a sort of a more efficient and innovative approach to the way that we are running our in-house team. And I've always been interested in this. I've always been interested in finding efficiencies and finding better ways to do things, and that's what legal operations is about. It's about a better delivery of legal services.
Fantastic. And what I found interesting here is it's great to see this being introduced as part of an event that's aimed to the law firms, the people that are looking to service.
So the event
group.
here, well, it's interesting because they invited me to speak about Clock, and I do find that interesting actually. That the law firms, I guess, need to get on board. They need to understand, and I think it's important for the law firms to know, about the buying power of Clock. I said yesterday that globally the Clock members have a buying power of I think, was it 50 billion, I think I said, which is huge.
Yeah, huge.
Huge. And the law firms need to know that I guess we're getting together and we're sharing information. One of the CLOC competencies is around vendor management. So CLOC have these 12 core competencies around for legal operations. So, which are interesting of itself, because you can look at where you are on the spectrum. And also you can focus on the things that matter or interest you. And vendor management is obviously, in the Australian context, I think the in-house corporate community have had quite an established vendor management program, and I know that we have at A&P, we've got a very well established panel arrangement. We've got 2 tiers of panel. We've got new entrants on our panel. But it's always been historically focused on rates.
Yes.
And I think, from what I'm learning from CLOC, we've got to move our vendor management program into a more, focusing on alternative fee arrangements and driving behavioural change in the way that we procure legal services.
Indeed.
And I guess bringing alternative legal service providers into the mix to challenge the firms. And I was asked a question yesterday about why I thought that was lower in the Australian context. And my view is that I think we've always we've gone to our traditional firms and we've relied upon them to procure their own alternative arrangements, to sit behind.
To be the bridge.
But I guess, what's happening in the US is that the in-house teams have more power to do that direct buying themselves and challenging the firms. And I think that's probably why the firms need to hear about CLOC.
Absolutely agree. Well, thank you for that, Anna. That was great.
Okay.
Thank you.